The rain hammered the windows like fists demanding entry. But inside our Brooklyn brownstone, the storm felt distant until I cracked open Elias's notebook and the world shattered. His words leaped off the page, raw and unrelenting. I lost him on a fire escape in the summer of '09. His laughter echoing like a promise I couldn't keep. My heart seized. That was us. 20 years woven into a single stolen night. But Elias didn't remember. He sat across the room now, staring blankly at the TV's flicker. The man I'd vowed to cherish in sickness and health. His mind a thief in the night. I slammed the notebook shut, breath ragged, as if closing it could seal away the ache blooming in my chest. Elias turned. His blue eyes, once sharp as scalpels in the ore, now softened by fog, tilting his head like a child puzzled by a half-forgotten toy. "Alex, you okay?" "Love." His voice was still that low rumble, the one that used to murmur sonnets against my skin, but tonight it cracked the silence like fragile glass. I forced a smile, the kind that hid hurricanes, and crossed the room to kneel beside his armchair, taking his hand, calloused from years of steadying lives on operating tables. How do you grieve someone who's right there, slipping through your fingers like smoke? We'd met in the chaos of a Manhattan ER. Me, a wide-eyed paramedic fresh from the academy. Him, the hotshot surgeon who could stitch a wound and crack a joke in the same breath. That night in July 2009, sirens wailing outside, we'd shared a cigarette on the hospital's rusted fire escape, the city pulsing below like a heartbeat we both needed. "Your trouble," he'd said, exhaling smoke that curled between us, his grin wolfish under the sodium lights. I'd laughed, nerves electric, and replied, "Only the kind worth getting into." By dawn, we'd kissed fierce, desperate, the kind that rewrites your stars. 6 months later, we were inseparable. 5 years after, rings on our fingers in a quiet ceremony overlooking the Hudson, vows whispered like secrets against the wind. But time, that cruel editor, had redlined our story. Elias's diagnosis came last spring, early onset Alzheimer's. The doctor said, words landing like blows in our sunlit kitchen. At 42, he was too young, too vital. The man who'd rebuilt hearts, now watching his own unravel. The notebook started as therapy, scribbles to anchor his drifting thoughts. But this was a confession, pages upon pages of our love recast as tragedy. He vanished like a ghost in the rain, Elias had written, leaving me hollow, chasing shadows of what we were. And there, underlined in his looping script, my true love, gone forever, gone. As if I weren't the ghost haunting his days, cooking eggs he forgot he'd eaten, folding laundry into drawers he searched in vain. I tucked the notebook under my arm and pulled him to his feet, his body leaning into mine with that familiar weight, solid, trusting, heartbreakingly light. "Let's get some air," I murmured, guiding him toward the door. The rain had eased to a drizzle, streets gleaming under street lamps as we stepped out onto the stoop. Neighbors' windows glowed like distant campfires, and somewhere a dog barked, sharp and insistent. Elias shivered, pulling his jacket tighter, the leather one I'd bought him for our 10th anniversary, scarred from too many late-night rides home. "Feels like that summer," he said suddenly, voice threading with wonder. "The one with the fireflies?" My throat tightened. Fireflies? We'd never seen any in the city. But oh, the memories he wove from fragments. I lied softly, wrapping an arm around his waist. The best summer. We walked then, aimless down Atlantic Avenue, past the bodega where we'd bought cheap wine for our first date, the coffee shop where he'd proposed on a whim, kneeling amid spilled sugar packets. His steps faltered at the corner, hand clutching mine like a lifeline. Alex. Did I ever tell you about him? The one who got away. The question hung, innocent as mist, and I stopped, rain beating on my lashes, fighting the urge to shake him, to yell that I was him, that we were us. Instead, I turned him to face me, cupping his jaw, stubble rough under my palm, eyes searching mine with that lost puppy plea that gutted me every time. Tell me, I whispered, voice breaking. Tell me everything. And so he did, words tumbling like loose stitches, the paramedic with fire in his veins. The nights tangled in sheets that smelled of hospital antiseptic and hope. The way love had bloomed fierce and unyielding against the world's sharp edges. He spoke of proposals under starry skies, our rooftop. Really, with takeout pizza, of fights that scarred but healed stronger, of a wedding where we danced until dawn, oblivious to the stairs. It was our life, dissected and mourned as if buried, his voice rising with the drama of a lost epic, tears streaking his cheeks, hands gesturing wildly as if summoning ghosts. By the time we looped back home, soaked and spent, the block was quiet, only the hush of tires on wet pavement. Elias collapsed onto the couch, exhausted, murmuring, "He was my anchor, Alex. Without him, I'm adrift." I sank beside him, pulling him close, his head on my shoulder, heartbeat syncing with mine like it always had. "You're not adrift," I said fiercely, fingers threading his damp hair. "You're right here. With me." He sighed, a sound of half-sleep, and whispered, "With you," as if tasting the words for truth. That night, as he dozed, I reopened the notebook, pen in hand, adding my own lines at the end. But what if the lost love never left? What if he's the shadow you hold every night, waiting for you to remember? Morning broke gray and unrelenting, coffee brewing in the kitchen like a ritual against forgetting. Elias shuffled in, tying his robe, the silk one from our honeymoon in the Keys. Frayed but cherished. "Pancakes?" he asked, hopeful, and I nodded, flipping batter while stealing glances at him, memorizing the tilt of his smile, the crinkle at his eyes. Work called, me to the ambulance bay, him to consult on a case, his mind still sharp enough for surgeries on good days. But as I laced my boots, he froze at the table, staring at the notebook I'd left open. "What's this?" he murmured, tracing the cover with reverence. Panic flickered. Had I overstepped? But then he flipped it open, eyes widening as he read my addition. In his own words, the pages blurring under his gaze. "Alex." His voice was a rasp, chair scraping as he stood. I braced, heart pounding like an alarm. This is us. Isn't it?" The question trembled, fragile as new ice. And I crossed to him, hands on his shoulders, searching those eyes for clarity, for a heartbeat. The fog lifted, recognition flashing like lightning, raw and electric. He breathed, pulling me in, forehead to forehead. My true love. How could I forget? We clung there, kitchen clock ticking softly, the world narrowing to breath and touch. It wasn't a cure, Doctors warned of these lucid windows, fleeting as summer storms, but in that moment, it was resurrection. He kissed me then, slow and deep, tasting of coffee and memory, hands framing my face as if afraid I'd vanish. "I'm sorry," he whispered against my lips, "for riding you away." Tears pricked, hot and unbidden, and I shook my head, voice muffled in his neck. "You didn't. You brought me back." The day unfolded in stolen fragments, him recounting snippets over breakfast, laughter bubbling as he misremembered our first fight over who left dishes in the sink, not the dramatic blowout he'd scripted. At the hospital, he texted, "Saw a kid today. Reminded me of you, stubborn. Beautiful." I grinned in the rig's cab, siren silent for once. Typing back, flatterer. "Save some for tonight." But doubt lingered, a shadow under the joy. His episodes came unbidden, words jumbling mid-sentence, keys lost in plain sight. Still, we leaned into the light, planning a drive upstate, away from the city's grind, to chase fireflies that might never appear but felt real in his stories. Evening brought the storm's echo, thunder rumbling distant as we cooked together, his knife skills faltering but steadying under my guidance. "Remember the fire escape?" he asked, chopping onions that stung our eyes. I nodded, throat tight. How could I forget? We ate on the fire escape now, plates balanced on knees, city hum below like an old friend. Wine loosened tongues. He pulled out the notebook, reading aloud his loss. My addition, voice weaving drama into our ordinary miracles. "It's like a novel," he said, eyes sparkling. "Our novel." I leaned in, lips brushing his temple. "The best kind." "True, but truth has teeth." 2 nights later, the fog rolled thick. Elias woke screaming, nightmare of drowning in blankness, chasing a shadow that dissolved. I held him through it, rocking like a child, murmuring anchors, names of streets we'd walked, songs we'd slow danced to. Dawn found him quiet, notebook clutched like a talisman. "Read to me," he pleaded, and I did aloud, voice steady, painting our love in vivid strokes. The paramedic who'd save his life in a pileup. The surgeon who'd mended mine after a bad call. Laughter crept in, then tears, his hand over mine on the page. "Don't let me lose this," he begged. "Promise." "Never," I vowed, sealing it with a kiss that tasted of salt and forever. Weeks blurred into a rhythm of vigilance and grace. Therapy sessions where he sketched our faces. Imperfect but fierce. Walks where he'd point to a bench and swear we'd carved initials there. We hadn't. But the lie bloomed sweet. I quit overtime, trading shifts for mornings tracing his palm lines, evenings reading his words back to him. Friends noticed, Mark from the firehouse clapping my shoulder. "You're a rock, Alex," but the weight carved hollows under my eyes. Sleep fractured by what-ifs. What if the windows closed for good? What if his story ended with me as footnote? The breaking point came on our anniversary, 20 years, marked by a quiet dinner at that Hudson overlook, wind whipping tablecloths like ghosts. Elias had insisted on driving, Hensher on the wheel, humming our song, Wonderwall, Oasis, because we'd been young and invincible. Candles flickered as he raised his glass, to true loves that find their way home. My chest swelled, but then his gaze drifted, for pausing midair. "Alex, who are you?" Really? The question sliced, casual as asking the time, but it bled. I froze, wine sour on my tongue, the river churning below like my gut. "I'm your husband," I said, voice a thread. "The one who loves you." He blinked, confusion creasing his brow, then smiled, polite, distant, the stranger's mask slipping over my Elias. Of course. Silly me. The drive home was silence. His head against the window, my knuckles white on the dash. At the brownstone, he retreated to his study, door clicking shut, and I paced the hall, fists clenched against the unfairness. Why us? Why steal the man who'd fought for every heartbeat, only to dim his own, curled on the couch later, notebook in lap? I wept ugly, wrenching sobs that shook the frame. His words mocked from the page. Loss. Longing. A love irretrievable. But then the door creaked. Elias silhouetted in lamplight, eyes wide with something like recognition. "Alex," he crossed, kneeling, thumbs brushing my tears. I wrote that. About you." The fog had lifted again, or perhaps never fully descended, his mind a battlefield. But tonight, memory held the line. "I forgot, but I feel it. Here, hand to heart, pulling mine atop. We made love then, slow and reverent, bodies mapping roads his mind couldn't, kisses like Braille, touches spelling trust. Afterward, tangled in sheets, he whispered, "Finish the story with me." Pen passed between us, words flowing, redemption in fragments. Love as the plot twist that defies endings. Dawn painted us gold, his breath even against my neck. And for the first time in months, hope felt tangible, not a ghost, but flesh and bone. The notebooks multiplied, a library of us, shelves groaning, under covers scrawled with dates. Drawings, pressed leaves from upstate drives where fireflies did appear, winking like conspirators. Elias's lucidity stretched longer. Therapy a lifeline he gripped with surgeon's precision. "We're rewriting the narrative," he'd say, grinning that wolfish tilt. And I'd laugh, pulling him close. Drama lingered, bad days when he'd lash out, accusing me of theft, the keys. Always the keys, but we navigated. Therapists praising our resilient bond, friends toasting at gatherings where he'd recount our fire escape like legend. One crisp fall evening, as leaves skittered across the stoop, Elias handed me the final notebook, bound in leather, our initials embossed. "For you," he said, eyes clear, voice steady. The whole story. I opened it. Pages thick with our lives, the hook of that first kiss, the tension of diagnoses, the romance in stolen glances, climax in near losses, resolution in rediscovery. At the end, his script he never left. My true love was the man I married, the one who stayed. Tears blurred the ink, and I looked up, finding him on one knee, ring glinting, our original, resized for his thinner finger. "Marry me again, Alex. Tomorrow." So I remember. The ceremony was small, rooftop at dusk. Mark officiating with a grin, rain holding off like a blessing. Vows echoed ours from years ago, but sharper now, etched against forgetting, in shadows and light. "I choose you." We danced under strings of lights, his head on my shoulder, whispering, "This is the ending that matters." And as stars pricked the sky, I knew it was love not as fairy tale, but testament to endurance, humanistic in its raw, unpolished grace. We were the plot twist, the forgotten love reclaimed. writing our forever one word at a time. Months turned to a year. Elias's progression a slow tide. But our arsenal grew, apps for reminders, groups for laughter amid the ache. He consulted less, wrote more stories of us, shared at readings where crowds leaned in, moved by the drama of two men defying erasure. It's not loss, he'd tell them. My hand in his. It's evolution. Love adapts, and on quiet nights, fire escape our sanctuary. We'd read aloud, voices blending like harmony, the city below a chorus to our song. One evening, as snow dusted the streets, our first white Christmas in years, Elias turned from the window, eyes distant yet warm. Alex. The fireflies? I smiled, pulling him close. Right here, and in that gaze, flickering like bioluminescence, I saw eternity, not perfect, but profoundly ours. The notebooks lined the walls, testaments to a love that outwrote oblivion, dramatic in its humanity, romantic in its quiet fire. In the end, it wasn't about never forgetting, it was about loving through the fog, emerging whole. We were husbands, lovers, survivors, true love not lost, found again and